There comes a moment in every human life when the illusions collapse, when motivation fades, when inspiration disappears, when comfort no longer comforts you, and you're left standing alone in front of the mirror. Naked, vulnerable, without applause, without noise, and in that silence something ancient rises, something deeper than emotion, stronger than circumstance, something that does not beg for easier paths, but demands a stronger self. That something is discipline, not the kind you borrow from a book, not the kind you post about for clout. I'm speaking of the fire that lives in the marrow of your bones, the kind that doesn't need the sun to rise because it already burns from within. Discipline is not loud, it does not shout, it doesn't need hashtags or followers. It is the quiet force that reshapes mountains while the world sleeps. It is the invisible hammer that carves destiny into stone. And yet we abandon it, we fear it, we run from it, because we've been sold the lie that feelings are the highest compass, that if it doesn't feel good, it isn't meant to be. But history never bowed to feelings. Edison didn't wait to feel inspired when he failed 10,000 times trying to invent the light bulb. Lincoln didn't fold when failure chased him across decades. Disney wasn't guided by ease when banks laughed in his face. They moved through storms not because they felt ready, but because they were disciplined. You think your problem is procrastination. You think your enemy is laziness, but it's not. The real enemy is the addiction to comfort. It is the belief that the path of least resistance is the path of wisdom. But the Shaolin monk wakes before dawn not because it's easy, but because it is necessary. Because he knows that the soul does not grow in convenience, it grows in conflict. The modern world has sedated your fire. It has replaced the forge with soft cushions. It hands you dopamine instead of purpose. And while your phone scrolls on, your potential rots in the basement of your being, begging you to rise. Discipline is your rebellion. It is the act of taking your power back from a world that profits off your weakness. It is looking at your excuses and answering with action. It is building when no one claps. It is showing up when no one watches. It is sacrificing what feels good now for what builds greatness later. Understand this: there will never be a perfect day. There will never be a moment when the universe aligns with your comfort. You will not always be motivated, but you can always be disciplined. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you were destined to become. But let's go deeper. Discipline begins with clarity. Because if you do not know what you stand for, the world will hand you 1,000 distractions. If your mind is fogged with confusion, discipline dies. Look at the greats: Carnegie, Ford, Mandela. They weren't just driven, they were clear. They knew what they were chasing, and because of that, every sacrifice had meaning. Clarity is not found in noise, it is found in stillness, in the moments when you sit with yourself without numbing, without running. When you ask the hard questions: what do I want to become? What price am I willing to pay? What am I no longer willing to tolerate from myself? Clarity strips away the inessential. Discipline builds upon what remains. Once the mind is clear, belief must take root. Not a shallow belief that cracks under pressure, but an unshakable inner faith. A belief like iron, and that kind of belief is not born from books or mantras. It is born through action. Do you want to believe in yourself? Then do what you say you'll do. Build trust with yourself, day after day, layer by layer. Keep the small promises. Wake up when you said you would. Train when it hurts. Finish what you start. Every act of discipline is a vote towards self-respect, and eventually that respect becomes belief. A belief that no longer needs to be borrowed from others. This belief is what gives rise to vision, not a fantasy, not a dream, a vision clear, brutal, uncompromising, a vision of who you must become. And once that vision takes hold, discipline becomes natural. It becomes instinct. Why do the monks train in the cold, in silence, without comfort? Because they have seen what lies on the other side of mediocrity. Because they know that discipline is the architect of inner freedom. And so you ask, how do I find motivation? You don't. You replace it with ritual. You replace it with routine. You build systems that do not negotiate with mood. Discipline is the art of doing what needs to be done, especially when you don't want to. It is the decision that your future matters more than your feelings. It is saying, I will become this no matter the weather of my emotions. We live in a time that worships spontaneity, that glorifies impulse, that tells you to follow your heart. But hearts change, emotions shift, and the man or woman who builds their life on emotion will always be at the mercy of the storm. Discipline is the anchor in that storm. It is the unyielding center that says, I don't need the world to be calm. I will remain unshaken. It is the sword that cuts through excuses, the shield against doubt, the foundation on which you build a legacy, because let me remind you, the world does not reward potential. It rewards consistency. It rewards the disciplined, the ones who did not blink when it was hard, the ones who bled in silence, the ones who trained in the dark and walked into the light ready. You see, discipline is not punishment. It is devotion. It is the highest form of self-respect. When you choose discipline, you are not being hard on yourself. You are honoring yourself. You are saying, I am worth the effort. My future is worth the sacrifice. My vision is worth the pain. And yet, so many run from it, because it asks you to leave behind your laziness, because it asks you to kill the part of you that wants ease, comfort, distraction, because it demands that you rise even when no one is coming to save you. Discipline is the death of the old self, but with every death comes rebirth. The moment you choose discipline, you resurrect your power. You become the author again. You no longer drift with the winds of circumstance. You command your ship. You steer through storms, and the ocean of life, it respects the disciplined, because discipline does something the world cannot ignore. It compounds. One disciplined hour becomes a day. One disciplined day becomes a week. One week becomes a season, and seasons become a lifetime. This is how empires are built, quietly, brick by brick. No shortcuts. No hacks, just deliberate action, repeated without applause. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. Imagine if he had listened. Imagine if he chose comfort instead of vision. But he was disciplined enough to keep creating, to keep refining his craft, to keep knocking when every door was closed. And that's the paradox of discipline. The world resists it until it cannot deny it. There's a word the monks use, wu-wei, effortless action. It sounds like a contradiction, but it is the reward of long discipline. Because when you've practiced long enough, when you've carved the path into your very being, what once felt hard becomes instinct. You don't force the sword to strike, it flows. You don't force the words to come, they rise. You don't chase greatness, you become it. But this doesn't happen in a week. It doesn't happen because you journaled your dreams or shouted affirmations into the mirror. It happens because you showed up when it was inconvenient, because you ran when it rained, because you practiced when no one cared, because you trained your mind like a warrior sharpens his blade every day. This is why the Shaolin monk meditates before the sun and trains in silence. He's not chasing glory, he's chasing mastery, and mastery requires discipline not just in movement, but in thought, in speech, in presence. You can discipline your mind to let go of gossip, to let go of distraction, to choose focus, to choose depth in a world that rewards shallowness. You can discipline your body, not just for vanity, but for power. Not just for appearance, but for performance. Because when your body is strong, your mind obeys. You can discipline your spirit to be still in chaos, to forgive when it's hard, to stand tall when life punches you in the gut. To not just survive storms, but walk through them unchanged. That is what makes discipline your superpower. It touches every realm of your being. It is the only force strong enough to turn potential into power. Ask yourself this: how many times have you started something only to quit when it wasn't convenient? How many times have you made promises to yourself that you broke in silence, hoping no one would notice? Discipline is what ends that cycle. It's what says never again. It's what says I am no longer negotiating with my weakness. It's what says I may not be the most talented, I may not be the smartest, but I will be the last one standing. And in this world that is power. Look at the giants of history. They weren't always the best. They were just the ones who refused to give up, who showed up again and again and again, when it was ugly, when it was thankless, when it hurt. Because they knew the secret. Discipline is the cure for suffering, not by avoiding the pain, but by giving the pain a purpose. You think it's painful to wake early, to train hard, to say no to distraction. Try living a life of regret. Try living a life where your potential dies quietly while you numb yourself with entertainment. That is real pain, and that pain never ends because it's the pain of what could have been. Discipline gives your pain a direction. It turns suffering into sculpting. It carves character out of chaos. That is why you must stop chasing comfort. Comfort is a thief. It steals your edge. It convinces you that good enough is a worthy goal. But you were not built for good enough. You were built to be dangerous, to be formidable, to walk into a room and shift its energy not because of what you say, but because of who you've become through the fire of discipline. And do not mistake quiet discipline for weakness. A lion doesn't roar before the hunt. A warrior doesn't advertise his training. The world will see when it's time. Until then, you build, you sharpen. You train because one day all your discipline will be tested. Life will throw its weight at you. It will try to break you. And in that moment you will either rise or you will fall, not based on talent, not based on luck, but based on the habits you built in silence. Discipline is how you become unbreakable. When the world collapses around you, when everything you trusted begins to fall apart, it is not hope that saves you. It is not inspiration. It is not some mystical alignment of fate. It is discipline. Discipline is what holds the line when the storm hits. It's the steady hand when the earthquake comes. It's the rooted spine that refuses to bow. Because while others panic, while others drown in chaos, the disciplined remain grounded. Understand this: you cannot control the weather of life. People will betray you, markets will crash, health will falter, loss will come. And in those moments, if you have not trained your spirit, if you have not cultivated inner order, you will collapse. But if you have built your discipline like a fortress, then no storm can shake you. You will mourn, but you will not crumble. You will bleed, but you will not break. You will bend, but you will not be broken. This is not theory. This is not metaphor. This is history. This is how civilizations were born. Marcus Aurelius faced plague, war, betrayal, and ruled with reason and calm. Why? Because he trained. He did not wait for peace to be peaceful. He practiced virtue daily. He understood. The man who disciplines his mind becomes stronger than his circumstances. The same is true for you. Discipline is not for when life is easy. It is preparation for when it is not. But to be resilient, you must also be adaptable. Flexibility is not weakness. Adaptability is a weapon sharpened by clarity. The disciplined do not cling to one path. They do not mourn when doors close. They shift, they evolve, they bend without losing form. Adaptability is not about changing who you are, it's about refining how you move. A disciplined river doesn't panic when it hits rock. It doesn't scream at the obstacle. It flows around it, and in doing so, it smooths the very stone that once blocked it. That is discipline with intelligence. That is discipline with flow. Too many chase control, but the wise understand control is an illusion. What you can command is not the world, it is your reaction to it. And reaction is trained through repetition, through rituals, through internal discipline. When you lose something precious, you grieve, yes, but you rise. When you fail, you reflect, yes, but you do not quit, because you are not a slave to results. You are loyal to effort. And that's where most people fall. They worship outcome. But the disciplined worship process, they know that every result is just a shadow and that the real light lives in the work. That's how you walk forward in darkness. You do not wait for the light. You become the fire. This is what separates the average from the unstoppable. Not more resources, not more talent, but a ruthless devotion to action no matter the conditions. Because at the end of the day, it is not what you feel that matters. It is what you do. You feel tired, you still show up. You feel unmotivated, you still act. You feel lost, but you still take the next step. Every act of discipline whispers, I am still here. And with enough whispers, the world begins to listen. But let's be honest, discipline is lonely, it is quiet, it is invisible, and in a world addicted to instant validation, the silence of discipline can feel unbearable. You'll question yourself. You'll wonder if it's working. You'll look around and see others winning faster, louder, easier. And in those moments, you must remember, the oak tree grows slowly, but its roots go deeper than the weed that sprouts overnight. You are not here to grow fast. You are here to grow forever, because quick success is sweet, but it is fragile. And you are not here to be fragile. You are here to be formidable. So yes, let others chase the dopamine. Let others search for shortcuts. Let others burn bright and vanish. You build slow, you train hard, you sacrifice now for a future only you can see. You walk the long path because you know what lies at the end, legacy. You were not born to be average. You were not born to blend in, to conform, to cower. You were born to lead, to forge a path where none existed, to be a living embodiment of what it means to rise from nothing with discipline as your sword. And no one will hand that to you. You must claim it. You must earn it with blood, with sweat, with sleepless nights, with unshakable mornings, with thousands of small choices that no one sees. That is the price. But the reward is freedom, freedom from regret, freedom from weakness, freedom from the opinions of those who never dared, because the disciplined don't just change their lives, they change generations. They become proof that power is not something you are born with, it is something you become through relentless, intentional effort. And now, here you are, not by accident, not by chance, you came seeking something. And what you found is this truth: discipline is the gate, discipline is the path, discipline is the final form of freedom. The world will try to seduce you back into softness. It will whisper lies that pleasure is purpose. That feeling good is more important than becoming great, but you know better now. You've seen through it. You've tasted the hollow sweetness of shortcuts, and now you hunger for something real. You hunger for power. Not the power over others, but power over self, the rarest power of all. Because when you master yourself, you no longer chase validation. You no longer beg for permission. You no longer fold under pressure. You move with certainty, you live with precision, you execute with conviction. You don't wait for the stars to align, you become the gravity that moves stars into position. Discipline makes your life a weapon, not for destruction but for creation. A weapon for building legacies, for breaking generational chains, for shattering limitations written into your name by people too weak to carry your fire. Let them say you're too intense. Let them say you're obsessed. Let them say you've changed, because they're right, you have. You've evolved past excuses. You've upgraded your standards. You've set yourself ablaze, and in that fire, you found yourself. You are no longer waiting for the perfect plan. You are no longer a victim of mood. You are no longer seduced by the myth of balance. When your destiny demands imbalance, focus, effort, sacrifice, obsession. Because lions don't seek balance, they seek conquest. And you are no house cat. You are a storm. You are a weapon forged in stillness, refined in suffering, unleashed in purpose. Discipline is no longer what you do, it is who you are. It is written in your gait, etched in your eyes, heard in your silence, felt in your presence. And now it is time to act, time to build, time to finish what the weaker version of you started. You don't owe anyone comfort, you don't owe anyone explanation. You owe only the highest version of yourself, the truth and the effort to reach it, because that version is waiting. Standing at the edge of your potential, clad in fire, cloaked in wisdom, sharpened by trials, whispering, "I've been here all along, now earn me." This is not motivation, this is transformation, this is not hype. This is your awakening. You were not meant for a quiet life. You were not meant to tiptoe through existence, pleasing the world while starving your soul. You were meant to build something eternal, not with talent, not with luck, but with the unbreakable hammer of daily, deliberate discipline. And so you rise, no music, no lights, no audience, just footsteps in the dark, steady, powerful, relentless, because in the end, greatness is not an act, it's a habit and discipline. Discipline is the sacred ritual of those who refuse to die average. You are not average, you are not meant to be ordinary. You are not here to repeat history, you are here to make it. So take your pain, your doubt, your fear and forge it into steel. Take your small wins and stack them like bricks. Take every drop of discipline and build your throne. The world will not hand you your crown, but if you stay the course, if you keep striking the anvil, if you keep waking with fire, if you keep choosing progress over pleasure, purpose over impulse, vision over emotion, then nothing can stop you, because discipline is not just your edge, discipline is your superpower, and now you know how to use it.